Welcome to our Primus Atayra Shir, Parshas Shemos, Tafshin Pei Aleph. Tonight is the Yartzeit of three big tzaddikim: the Baal Tanya, the Shmuel ben Rabbi Avrami Sachachav, the grandson of the son of Avnei Nezer, and the grandson of the Kotzker Rebbe, and Rebelio Dessler, Mashkiach of Panovich. Interestingly enough, Dessler held himself to be a Talmud Muvak of the Baal Tanya. He used to say that whenever I saw it in an article, I didn't hear it from him straight, and maybe other people say it's not, maybe our people say it's not accurate, but apparently Rav Dessler used to quote from all sorts of Hasidic Sfarim, and he was like on the cutting edge of Mashkiach and Panovich, because he was like on the border of things that they didn't necessarily talk about. But apparently Rav Dessler said that whenever he had a problem in his learning, a suffix, something he couldn't understand, he said the Baal Tanya would come to him in a dream and explain it to him.
So I guess we have one potential overlap.
So and interestingly enough, they have the same Yartzeit. The Parshas Shemos starts off the Parshas of Shevivim. Shevivim is a man that's Mesugal for Tikkunim and Yonim of Kedusha. Has very much to do with the Galus Mitzrayim. Galus Mitzrayim was a Tikkun. Galus Mitzrayim was a Kor Barzel. Something went on in Mitzrayim that was Mitzar of Klal Yisrael, Big Kedusha. To be misakin certain pagams that were there, Ki'ilu pagams that were from the DNA of the Bria, because these pagams are already from the Zman of Adam Rishon. More specifically, it's brought down that in the Mikubalim, the Arizal, I'm assuming it's a source in the Zayar, that the Neshamas of the Yidden Mitzrayim had a shaykh to the Begab of Adam Rishon, the Kufla Amet Adam Rishon was Maitzi Ruchin V'Shed and Belilin when he was Parish from Chav after Chet of Eitz Hadas. What that means, it's hard for us to say what it means on Adam Rishon's level. On our level, what it means is that there was a disconnect from his source of Kedusha. When you say a person is Maitzi Kedusha Levatala, that means a person's total she'if and cheshek has to be to connect HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and to be moiled Kedusha in the Welt. And any time a person has a connection to nothingness, to imagination, and that's where he channels all his cheshek, this is just a tremendous pagam, because the cheshek of a yid is so powerful and so valuable, and when this cheshek is nisaira larik, when it's nisaira for nothing, it's a tremendous pagam, and that's would be some level. Obviously, I can't talk about Adam Rishon, but that's the Mashal Chazal gives Adam Rishon, that there's some sort of haylada larik. And that's what the tikkun of Mitzrayim is. Klal Yisrael are those nishamas that went liibud, we'll call it. I'm not sure if I'm medactic in lashon, and you have to be very careful on shyness when you talk about sensitive topics. But so the Rizal says that the Daramabel came back with these neshamas, and they were mashchas again. Kishchas kol basar is dakal arts mamish is meramis to this. This pagam itself of Hashchasa and Daraflaga, and finally in Mitzrayim, Klal Yisrael came back. These neshamas came back, and they were ready for their tikkun. And the Shemos goes through, interestingly enough, the idea of how through Gilgal Gilgal makes tikkunim. And the Mabel had some sort of tikkun in the fact that they're nidin b'reischim, that they had some sort of tikkun that when they came back, he doesn't really, he leaves out the Arflag over here. But they were nidin b'reischim, and their tikkun started, and they came back Klai on Mitzrayim, and they were able through the Shibur of Mitzrayim to be misakin what they need to be misakin. Has a long shtickle. Shemos has a long shtickle in the beginning of the parsha over here, and he makes the following statement. I'm really picking out like one nikud of what he says. He says that the pasuk says v'yakum melech chadash ha-Mitzrayim. Right, so what's Melech Chadash? And it's Chachri Gzeiraisav. He has new Gezeiris. So he asked Akasha, what do you mean it's Chachri Gzeiraisav? This was his first Gezeiris. Right? This is where he started making the Gezeiris on Klal Yisrael. So what's this Lashon it's Chachri Gzeiraisav? So he says the Pshat Hazeh that Paro had a special tviya on the tremendous avodas perach of Klal Yisrael. He gave them first. He made it voluntary. He made it very. He incentivized the avodah, and incentivized the avodah. So Klal Yisrael went in with all the cheshek, and the first day of avodah, everyone produced a tremendous amount. Parshas said, "You know what? You see what you could do with cheshek? You can do that every day from now on." So he set the bar of their avodah on avodah b'cheshek. Right, she says his Chachuk Gzeiraisav was that his Gzeir was a Gzeir of Chiddush. You have to be Mechadish. You have to have his Chachus. Dr. Shemos Shmuel, this is a gewaltige Hachon of Kabbalah Satira. Kabbalah Satira is B'chol Yom Yom Yu Be'inecha Kechadoshim. So the part of the Kor Barzil's Mitzrayim that Klal Yisrael got accustomed to every day waking up, and despite the fact there wasn't mechudesh, to have to give it their all and have this and do the avodah with a cheshek with his chachas. But also he says this is mamish keneged the pegam that they had to be misakin. What's the pegam that had to be misakin? The pegam that had to be misakin chet ad marishan. This chet is a chet of cheshek that goes lyric, right? The tremendous cheshek that goes that's not activated. When this cheshek is not is kil goes levatala, right? The tikkun of it is avodah mit cheshek, right? That Klal Yisrael is forced to find cheshek and produce mit cheshek, and this is how he describes Lanias Daiti this inyan of Klal Yisrael's avodah in Mitzrayim, the tikkun related to the chet of Adam Arishan. He says that when the Torah describes Klal Yisrael in the Psukim over here, it refers to Klal Yisrael b'lashon Yachid, right? Am b'nei Yisrael Rav kasher yanu oisai, right? What's this lashon of Yachid? He says because the whole inyan of the avodas perach Mitzrayim was an avodah of cheshek, an avodah of ratzon. He says, in Gufim, Klal Yisrael are separate. In ratzon, we're one. Right? Klal Yisrael is be'emes, guf echad, and ratzon. So from the fact that Klal Yisrael was getting their tikkun in the olam of ratzon, in this bechina of their avodah, you had this achdus of Klal Yisrael. Just very pashut, applying this to our avodah. You may shavim. Well, what's avodah shavim? What's shavim? Okay, should I fast? Should I do all sorts of sigufim? Right? And the answer would be is person has to be mechadish every day. Right? The person has to get up every day and say, despite the fact you don't naturally feel that kayach chiddush of every day, but you have to find it. And if you work on finding it, you'll uncover it, and that will be the greatest tikkun for these days, is having a cheshek and ratzon avodas Hashem. Svarim HaKadosh say the greatest tikkun on Chet HaYedua is Rischa D'Oraisa, right? Which would be the cheshik of learning. A person heats himself up for an Aveira. A person heats himself up for learning. A person in the Chet HaYedua, what's involved in it is a razor sharp focus on nothingness, on tumah, right? It's a koyach hamachshava, just a razor sharp focus of cheshik and the chamimus of it, and a person has the ability to focus on his learning, and really melt into his Gemara, melt into his Sefer, melt into his Chumash, melt into his Mishnayos, melt into his Shulchan Aruch, and really that becomes his whole life. He disappears into that. Right? That is literally a exercise in kedusha of what is coming to be misaken. The Baal Tanya Parak Yudalad Sefer HaBeinonim Likuti Amorim. He asks a kasha. Right, the Tanya starts off with the Gemara in Nida that a child before it's born, the neshama is taken up to the Kisa covered. Mashmi noise to tzaddik v'al rasha. Make him make a sure he's going to be a tzaddik, he's not going to be a rasha. So he asks the kasha that l'chayra, once you make him make a sure he's going to be a tzaddik, what do you have to make a sure he's not going to be a rasha for? Right? If you're a tzaddik, then you're not a rasha. So what's this shua of titzadik v'al rasha?
There's only one option. meaning if there must be an option to titzadik v'al rasha. So I'm telling you, you can't be an average Joe.
Right, but if you make a sure you could be a tzaddik, say it's it. You're a tzaddik, right? If you're a tzaddik, you're not a rasha, l'chayra, right? So he says, based on what he says until now, he says there's the bechin of tzaddik, is the bechin of a person that is libi chol b'kirba. He reaches a madrega, like we described from the Rebbe Rebbe, right? That is, the Yetzirah is gone. He's done his avodah to a point where the Yetzirah has disappeared. He's a complete tzaddik. There aren't any nisyonis anymore. However, such a madrega is that you could acquire on your own. You could have two people do the same exact avodah, and one will reach that madrega, one won't. He said the avodah of a yid is to be a beinani. A beinani is a person that has struggles, but he doesn't fail. Because the moment you fail, you're a rasha. Right? People think that a person's a rasha when he's a wicked person. Right? He's the guy that doesn't say please, he doesn't say thank you, and he doesn't say excuse me when he bumps into you. Right? These are the Rishonim of the world.
The guy with the long hair and the coloring books. Right.
You know, the unshaven guy with the tattoos, right? Who's really mean, really disgusting, really impolite, and he's the rasha. Talked about Tanya. No, a rasha is a person that's an Isaac Ba'avera. A person doing an Avera, he could have learned the whole first Seder. Now he's on his phone, now he's a rasha. Right? Rasha is when you're Davak Bera, a person's a rasha. So he says, so those are the three madregas. There's a rasha. Right? Avad, there's people whose rishus is so wide that when you don them up from head to toe, you're going to find that there's more chet than mitzvahs. However, a Rosh is someone that's Davik Birah, that's doing an Aveira. It doesn't mean that this may be his only Aveira. He could be a Rosh when he has a Chesaron in his, but he's not being medactic in his mitzvahs. He could be a Rosh because there's Chesaron over there. So he says that's pshat in the Gemara. Gemara says to tzaddik that not every person is able to be a tzaddik. You don't have bechir to be a tzaddik. Because the madreg of tzaddik is that person is Misanig al Hashem and Olam Hazeh, and he's most birah mamash in this world, right? And that's not a madrega you could attain per se. We say tehit tzaddik, make a sure you're going to try to be a tzaddik. You're going to try to attain that madrega. That madrega not biyotcha, right? But the second shua is alti rasha. right? That on Rishus you have Bechira, right? So he says you have a shua to try to be a tzaddik, to try to earn that Madreg of Tzidkis. And the second is a shua on what you have Bechira for. Right, that you have Bechira to control your taiva and to be kaivish your yetzer for up to a point that you never fail. And the shul you make is I'm never going to fail. Every mitzvah comes to my way. I'm going to work to do it b'shleimus. Any nisai that comes my way, I'm going to not allow myself to slip into rishos. So he says interesting hadrach at this point. He says, despite the fact this madreg of tzidkis is not something of being a tzaddik that's biyotcha to attain, he says, ach akopot afal pikein tzarich lekvoy leitim gankein loshes etes benafshay liyos mayis bera. You have to try the best you could, right? In his bindiness, we're just learning about this in Parshas and in Mesilas Yesharim. If you're misbinding about how nothing Taivas Eilam Hazeh is, and how Be'emes, how Piseichel, he quotes the Gemara in the Erev, and Isha is a Chemes Milei Atzaya, right? And he applies it, Kol Minim Atam Madanim Nasikach Chemes Milei. V'chein Kol Tanu Geilam Hazeh Chacham Roya Hanoil Mem Shesayf and Lirkaif Liyashim Va'ashba. Right? So the one hand, if you're misbinding, and you have to, that's part of your avodah, you have to somehow try to inoculate yourself with these ideas that Taivas Eilam Hazeh garnish, right? Like the Ramchal Parshas talks about this idea. And then Mi'iduch Gisa, a person has to psych himself up, right? To be misaneg al Hashem, and to be misbinding on the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and try to get into your imagination, right? This idea of being misaneg al Hashem, and he says, run with it. He says, even though he says that you're sort of putting yourself in an imaginary state, and it's not really you. He says, however, the hergel al davern shilton v'nasa tev hasheni. Ukshiyargel mai says hara yinim skitzas be'emes. Be'emes is a little bit. It's going to stick, right? And also kshiyargel is smayach nafshi ba'Hashem ha'idei is b'nei gudul Hashem, right? Haribis harusa de l'satis harusa de leila v'kuli hay v'ulai yeralav ruach mimar yifkel lebchinas ruach misharish ezet tzadik shedes arabai lavet Hashem b'simcha mitis. He says if a person allows himself to dream a little bit, right? That's what Shavim is. It's time to dream. It's the time to really try to light up your ratzon, light up your cheshik. I say I recognize my cheshik for pastrami is greater than my cheshik for avodas Hashem. I know be'emes, I see pastrami and I feel that calling inside of me. And when I see a Gemara, it's not the same, right? But the avodah of a person is to be misayir himself and imagine that there's not that his Gemara is a pastrami sandwich, or if pastrami is not your thing, you find out what it is, right? And and he says something that I think is very appropriate for tonight. That was sitting here with the Yartzeit 3 tzaddikim that we're celebrating this Yartzeit, and he says that if a person is ma'ir himself, so he says b'sarusa del satis harusa del leila. If from ourself below, Kadosh Baruch will make a saris l'mayla, b'kuli hay v'ulai, right? Maybe to efshar a person be zeche yeralav ruach mimar, the poor to be ma'ir on him, the pour on him a ruach mimar, v'yiske b'chiras ruach misharish ezet tzadik shetes arabai. Lavet Hashem b'simcha mitis. Right, then you have the siyua, the tzaddikim. We have tzaddikim, a big tzaddikim tonight that we're connecting to, and if we take the message of the tachlis of the Mei Shavim, which was the whole tachlis of the Korah Baals, it sound like we saw from the Shem Shmuel, which is this iris of ischachas, this iris of intense ratzon. So then we'll talk about zeicha to this Abrabanu. the neshama is on some level of these tzaddikim. K'dechsiv simchut tzaddikim b'Hashem. Tziskai b'be'emes hashur shebashpiyim titzadik. We'll have some sort of kiyum of the shur of titzadik. Just for rice with the such take on the Zohar this week. Zohar brings down that Zohar brings down that the Yecheskel, the Mara Nevuah of Yecheskel of Ma'aser Merkava. So he says, "Vayivasei Chagoyla." He's in Galus, he's in bubble, and he's Megal this whole the whole Nevuah of the Ma'aser Merkava. So, in fact, there's a kasha that what's going on? What's Yecheskel being Megala? His Nevuah Ma'aser Merkava, right? He's Mamish Megala Saidus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What's the pshat? He was Megala such Saidus. So the Zohar says that Klal Yisrael went to Gal's bubble and they were in a real rut. Why? Because Gal's Mitzrayim wasn't so bad, because Klal Yisrael was used to, they never were B'nai Malachim. They never had this tremendous gadlus of Klal Yisrael. They went from Nisayan to Nisayan to Nisayan until they ended up in Mitzrayim. And so Mitzrayim, they were used to, the Klal Yisrael was already Morgul. They were Morgul to be Saival. They never had it great. Masha'enke and Klal Yisrael by Yisrael had such gedula, they had such hasagas, that's such melucha. And all of a sudden they went from Igra Ramel to Bira Mikdav. At one time they could be Saival, and they were mamish. They were in the dumps. Comes along HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he's megale to Yecheskel all the Ma'aser Merkava. And Yecheskel says over all the Ma'aser Merkava to Klal Yisrael, and Yecheskel told Klal Yisrael, you see this Mara Nevuah I just had, that whole Mara Nevuah is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and all his chayolos are coming to Babel with us. Meaning the idea that Yecheskel had this Mara Nevuah in Babel, it was to show that this Mara Nevuah is happening. All this is galus. You're not alone in galus. Klal Yisrael not alone in galus. People think you're in galus, it's kilo. Hashem has abandoned us, and it's exactly the opposite. At the whole beginning of the whole Eilish Mois B'nai Yisrael Ba Mitzrayim, Eis Yaakov Ishu Beisu Bayu, Eis Yaakov, right? All the Ribuim, Eis Yaakov Ishu Beisu Bayu, state in the Zohar. This is referring to all the Kadosh Baruch Hu and the Shechina and all the Malachim of all the Ilamis, all came into Galus Mitzrayim. And this is what happened, and this is what the Yecheskel was being Megal this side in Galus Bavel. Zok the Zohar. When Klal Yisrael heard this is Iris, that the Kaviyachah, the Shechin, and the entire Pamal Shemayla has come down to be with them in Galus, Kivin the Cham Yisrael Kach Chadu. And when they heard this, they were besimcha, and lechaishu galus and klal. The Galus did no longer disturb them. The yadu the kochibrichu leishavik lan chamad the gali b'shus gali. Right, that they knew that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not forsake them. And Mela, they were no longer distraught anymore. The lashon of there's a lashon as a lashon achrid brings out just the lashon over here. So it says, Ram Rab Shem Lishna Achrina, Bei Shait Echad Yisrael Chavas Shleimas B'Siyata Demarei Davi Yimoin. Klal Yisrael had a total shleimus that HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the whole Pamal Shemayla is here with him in Galus. V'chol Chav Minaya all Ruusa de Libe B'Richemusa Sagya. Everyone had tremendous Ava of HaKadosh Baruch Hu so much. Lemimsa Nafshei HaKadoshas Demarei. Right, they attained such an Avas Hashem that they from that time on they were willing to be Ma'aser Nefesh for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that was the purpose of Yecheskel being Megal beside this, to inspire Klal Yisrael to know that Kadosh Baruch Hu loves them, and that Klal Yisrael will be willing to be soivel, be ma'aser nefesh, l'man kvayt shemayim. B'kitzer, this is where we're holding in Galus, and this is where we're holding in Meishayim to recognize that Shekhinah is with us, and to find the pnimius in the Galus, which is the pnimius is HaKadosh Baruch Hu is always here with us, and to be willing to be ma'aser nefesh for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I just saw recently that I think it was a Gemara in Sanhedrin. It says that at least one of the pshatim in the Gemara is that the Dar Icarus in the Mashiach, it says a lashon that the tzaddikim are going to be very challenged. And one of the pshatim in the challenges is in Parnasa they're very challenged. But another pshat in the challenges is that normally, like we saw from the Baal Tanya, that a person reaches certain madrigas and you expect the nisyonis in kedusha to diminish. In Darikas and the Mashiach, that's not the case. A person can be Ovid, he could be Ayman bin Isayin, he could be entire himself, and the avoid of this galus is you're going to have the nisyonis, the simple nisyonis, the grubber nisyonis that you would never imagine. Why should I have these grubber nisyonis? I don't deserve this. I'm past this. When do I graduate for these grubber nisyonis? And the answer is that the tikkun of galus is you deal with the grubber nisyonis again and again and again. And if you deal with it be'emes, you're misbinding on your ma'isperon, you're misbinding on the simcha of being mistabik and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kuli hai v'ulai yera aleinu kedushim imorim yisara banu nishmais harbe tzadikim to be messiahs and avodah b'taka b'zeicha to gula shlema b'karev agit Shabbos.